inside of DT on the CFP, which is what we call my coverage of the college football playoff every single season. Scottie, I appreciate your patience, and we're happy to have you here as always. Welcome to the show, and good morning.
Thanks for having me back again, Dan.
Of course, it's my pleasure to do that. So I can't believe we're already in college football playoff season, Scottie. I literally I miss college football like crazy when it's gone. And then I sit here and I wait for the next game. I wait for the end of August, and then I blink, and here I am going to be traveling all over the country. So how fast did it come for you this year?
It definitely seems like this fall went fast. You know, like you, I'm a huge sports fan. This is why I work in sports. So the off season, when you're waiting for the college football season, it seems like it's getting long. But honestly, you know, for us, it has some prolongness to it because by the time you go through the national championship in January, and then you start doing your wrap up in January, February, then meetings start happening in March, and spring meetings in April and May, and then national convention for college athletics in June, and then media days are in July. July is really a linchpin, as you know, because we've connected it many times in July for media days across the country, and
Yeah.
and then you get that lull in August, but because of week zero, you normally have a game that third or fourth week in August. So while there is a wait, there is a lot of college football things going on throughout the course of the year. A lot of things behind the scenes that I won't get into, and people probably will think is boring, but it really keeps us connected to the game, even though there's not live action happening on the gridiron.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, there's so many things that are going on in the background, and as I was saying, when college football playoff season is over, my brain was like, it's never, it's never
Yeah,
really
yeah,
over, and you and I know
yeah,
that because we live it every day, and
yeah.
so we know that we are constantly in the thick of things, even when there's not games going on. And speaking of games going on, we now know, which I'm happy that we got to do this now, we know that your matchup is going to at least have Ohio State, which is going to be the return of a team that was with you last year. And with the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic being a part of the college football playoff every single season, it's either a quarterfinal or semifinal game. Last year, it was a semifinal game between Ohio State and Texas, where we saw Ohio State make it to the national championship. And this year in the quarterfinals, we'll see Ohio State again. So kind of some irony and some uniqueness here that we could see Ohio State go through your bowl twice in back-to-back years, but Miami or Texas A&M is going to have something to say about that. Now that you've seen the matchup from the college football playoff, what are your thoughts on what is to come?
Well, Dan, I got to correct you. This is the third year in a row Ohio State
Oh,
has
that's
been in
true.
our
That
game,
is very true.
and they were
That
they're in
is
the
true.
80. They were in the 80. It's crazy to think they were in the 88th with Missouri, and then came back in the 89th against Texas earlier this year, this calendar year. This is a unique year for us to have two football games in the same calendar year. Obviously, two different seasons, but the same calendar year.
Yeah.
Because the game is our semifinal game was on January 10th, and now we're going to be having this quarterfinal matchup, the first time as a quarterfinal on New Year's Eve. We're very excited. The folks at Ohio State are excited. We've had some conversations with the good folks at Miami and Texas A&M. And some of those conversations are actually going to happen in the next couple of days as they're preparing for not only their first round game in College Station between Miami and Texas A&M, but preparing for if they make it to the next round, because it's a quick turnaround when you think about, they play that game on the 20th, and then they will arrive in North Texas on the 28th. And there's media availabilities that will happen virtually in between that time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on for these teams this time of year. So they really have to do a lot of planning, not just with what they have right in front of them, but the next step and even the next step. Because if you don't have some pre-planning behind the scenes, you're never going to be able to manipulate all the logistics, meet all the deadlines, get all the information that needs to be. It's very important for us to make sure that we have enough information or as much information as we.
Yeah. And I think that, and I think that Scotty freeze for us. Oh no, we got you. Okay. So, and I will redeem myself, Scotty, by saying that looking at the fact of the Ohio State coming through you three times, one was outside of the college football playoff. So
Yes,
so yeah.
yes.
So back to back college football playoff en route is where I was heading. But yeah, Ohio State 3 years in a row. So have you gotten used to the Buckeyes? Is there any playful banter with Ryan Day or with the athletic department, the athletic director, that it's like, oh, okay, apparently the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic is just, a place for the Buckeyes. It's one of their games on the schedule.
Well, it is pretty neat, whether it's the communication folks at Ohio State, Jerry Emick and Mike Bashford. We have, I work with them most closely, so I actually know them very well now. We've had some good conversation already. There's definitely a few of the media folks in the Ohio State contingent that I've connected with before, with some of the conversation we had going back 3 years ago and last season, earlier this year. So, a couple of them have texted me because they have my number just to say, hey, we're excited to come back or looking forward to it, or they just have a question about what's going on. And I think they have some comfortability knowing that they know the people that they're dealing with. And we're excited to have them come back, and hopefully there'll be new folks that'll be able to make it from their contingent here to North Texas. So we're excited about that. Miami's been in our game. It's been a really long time, and Texas A&M has been in our game. We obviously have a little bit more of a connectivity with Texas A&M through the times we've had with them through the Southwest Classic and the regular season game
Yeah.
that was played here. This was the first season that game was not played. So, the good folks all the way around. That's the great thing about this business. And yeah, I think working in college athletics is that while you may not connect with people all the time because games are not played in your place, you have a connectivity to them. People have moved from school to school or conference to conference, and you have a chance to really reconnect with them in a good way. So we're excited to have either Miami or Texas A&M in the game with Ohio State.
And you and I have spoken about preparation because the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic, we talk about all the time that you have a special secret sauce. You have a way that you go about doing what you do, and you have to be prepared for everyone, right? It's not like in the past when you knew, okay, these are our matchups. When there was a 4-team college football playoff and you rotated in and out of being a semifinal game, the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic had time to prepare for both teams, but you essentially have to prepare for 3 teams in this situation. So how do you go about that with your team to dig a little bit deeper into being a quarterfinal matchup this year, knowing that there are, Ohio State, so you're talking to their contingent, like you said, you're building with them, you're working with them, but you're also working with Texas A&M and Miami on a quick turnaround. So what is that experience like behind the scenes?
As we sit here as the week right after the bracket is announced, the biggest thing is that one, we work with the CFP and we create a manual that has a lot of information in it for the teams, and everything, you name it, name every area that you might think about from the operations of a game, from what happens at the hotels, what happens at the stadium, what happens with the media, what happens from a medical standpoint, what happens from the transportation, hospitality, you name all the different areas. And that manual really gives them a lot of information. And they start getting that information, once the rankings start. So this information just doesn't pop up to them when they are in the final CFP rankings and determine that they're in the 12-team bracket. So they have a lot of this information in advance. And then this first week coming off of the bracket announcement, for us, the schools, the 3 this year, plan site visits or maybe not, to come here to DFW to see the things up close and personal. Sometimes schools may take the trip because they're unfamiliar. Sometimes they don't necessarily make a coordinated trip because they have familiarity, like in Ohio State. Yeah. So it gives them a chance for their key people on their administrative staff, from the president's office, from the alumni office. They can come in town and start looking at all the different aspects, whether it's logistical things at the stadium, logistical things at the hotel. And when you talk about president's office and alumni office, they're looking at the ancillary events they could potentially have, what venues are available to them to do, whether it's in Arlington or somewhere else in North Texas, where maybe it's near their hotel. maybe it's not, maybe it's inside their hotel, maybe it's not. So they really want to make sure they have a good plan in place so that when they are determined that they're going to be in our game, they're ready to go and they're ready to really enact those plans, get things finalized, and get that information out to their constituents so they can really and truly have a great experience for everybody that's going to be able to come to town.
Yeah, and we know that Miami will be visiting Texas A&M in, not too far away, right? I mean, in the state of Texas. We know Texas is a massive state. It's like a country all its own, but we know that Texas A&M matchup in the first round hosting Miami is on December 20th, and then your game is on December 31st, the last day of the year and my father's birthday. So how soon do they come to you? Like you said, they can do site visits, so they can do different things ahead of time. But once that game is done on December 20th and we have a week and a half ish, not even, in between, when do you anticipate bringing in Ohio State and whoever wins the Texas A&M Miami game?
Our teams are slated to come in on December 28th. So they will come in on the 28th. As I mentioned, between the 22nd and the 26th, we don't know the exact dates, but we will have some virtual media availabilities for the teams. Obviously, there'll be a lot of planning and a lot of conversations, but since everything has to happen is on campus, we have to do those virtually with via Zoom. And then they'll arrive on the 28th. There'll be a media availability as a part of that arrival. Yeah. And then the next day, because we are a quarterfinal and the quarterfinal has one more day than the semifinal schedule, and even so that we will do a media day, which we didn't do last year because we didn't have the quote unquote extra day. So we'll do a media day where both teams will bring their entire rosters and coaches to the stadium for a media session, which will be fantastic. And then they'll have practice. Both will practice later that day, and that's the 29th. And then the 30th, which is the day before the game, we'll have our traditional head coaches news conference, as we've done many, many times before. And then the 31st is the game. Now, behind the scenes, there's hospitality opportunities for the teams at their hotel. There's some ancillary events that will take place, whether it's 2 days before or it's our or the day before, it's our Battle of the Bands we're going to be able to do in our Cotton Bowl live event, and then the day of, we're excited to know that we're going to have DJ Diesel, Shaquille O'Neal, for those who don't know his alter ego. Yeah. He's gonna be back for double dip this year. He's gonna do our fan fest again at 4:30 before the game, and then after the game, he's gonna go right up the road to Texas Live and help bring in the new year and a New Year's Eve event there. So that's a fun opportunity for our fans. We're continuing to do more things like that where we can hopefully make this an experience for people coming down. With our game being on New Year's Eve, we want people to be excited to come here and help bring in the new year with us. We're going to have a great college football game. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to bring in the new year, just a couple hours probably right after that. So it's going to be really, really exciting. We're excited about it. And we want to make sure folks that come in for a couple, 3 days are going to have a lot of fun and can engage with everything that North Texas has to offer.
Well, and I think that that's another piece of this, right, Scottie? Because you and I spoke, we've spoken over the years about being unique and trying to come up with ideas. And I can say this from the media hospitality side of it. You do so many wonderful things. I remember, getting in touch with my family and saying, like, I shot pool for 2 hours. There was this like giant candy section. There was these really cool places to sit and watch the game. There was a buffet and whatnot. So you could sit and watch, because I think, after your game, the NFL was on. And so, I was taking part in watching that. But you do so much with the community. You do so much with the media. And you work and utilize all of these awesome things that you have around you, like you spoke about Texas Live. So just to speak about the DFW area and all of the resources you have, essentially, that when you're assembling this experience for the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic, you have so many places in your backyard to really involve the media and the fans and the teams.
Absolutely. It's very clear. Look, we don't have a beach like Miami. We don't have a Bourbon Street like New Orleans. So we have to rely on our Texas size hospitality to really be something that is our separator, and it is a part of our secret sauce. One of the things that we do have is that we have so much that is available to us, as you mentioned in DFW. The stadium is in Arlington. We have teams staying in Grapevine and in Dallas. Our media hotel is in Irving. So we have a lot of relationships with a lot of different, if I start naming all the cities, I'll forget many of them, but there's so many cities that makes up North Texas that is just not Arlington, that is just not Dallas, that is just not Fort Worth, that creates multiple opportunities for fans of coming in town. Now for the teams, their schedule's pretty. They're going from the airport to the hotel to the stadium to the hotel to the stadium and then probably going home
Yeah.
after the game. They don't but for the folks that are coming to enjoy the experience, we want to make sure that they understand and know that all these things, whether it's in Arlington or in any of the other cities, obviously Dallas and obviously Fort Worth are the first things that come to mind. But there's so much going on around and people can get exposed to it. And I think that's what makes it a great experience, looking at it from a fan perspective. If you do come in town 2 or 3 days before the game, you got plenty of things to do to take up your time, whether it's touring the stadium, touring the Rangers Stadium, which is right up the road, or going to all the museums and entertainment, cultural things that you can do here all around. You can really engross yourself in that and really have some fun and see some things that maybe you don't get to see. Being a quarterfinal in our game being on New Year's Eve, it sits a lot differently than it did last year as a semifinal and our game was on January 10th. The world is a little different right around New Year's Eve because schools are out. Many people are not working or off from work. So they have a little bit more freedom of movement without, the daily constraints of work or school or those types of things. So we hope that that is going to bring more people out, not only more people from the participating institutions, but more people in the DFW who just want to be out and about and just want to be a part of it. Our Cotton Bowl Live event at Texas Live the night before is a free event.
Yeah.
Our Battle of the Bands is happening the day before, which happens right before that. It's a free event. That's something that people can go to that don't have tickets. And what's going to happen at a Texas Live, for example, on game day. You can buy a ticket to that and have access to that before and after the game. If you don't, our Fan Fest is a ticketed event. You have to have a game ticket to get in as a part of that because it's happening on game day. But like I said, there's so many other different things to do, and people, you can ask me, but I can only tell you so much because there's literally so much going on in DFW that it is hard to put it all in one succinct message or conversation about what you can do and what you can engage with.
Yeah, I mean, and then right there, right by the stadium, if you go up a little bit, Hurtado's there, which to me has the best tostadas that I've ever had in my life. There's a JFK tour you can take in downtown Dallas. There's a lot of things that you could do. And of course, there's a Six Flags that's right there. So there's so many things in the DFW area for sure. Here with Scottie Rodgers, the VP of Communications inside of the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic, which is inside the college football playoff here for the 2025-26 season. And where we had the media hotel in Irving, they've like built a city, like, or a little town that's kind of like, it's in Irving, but it's its own thing. And it's got an old cinema, but which shows new movies and old movies, but it's got like an old feel to it. It's got a bunch of awesome restaurants, places to have music outside. And so, I mean, I can say to that side of it too, Scottie, like, since I left the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic last year, I've wanted to come back to where the media hotel was so that I could take part in being in that like town that kind of created itself over the last couple of years.
Yeah, you're talking about the area that's called the Toyota Music Factory. It's a wonderful entertainment area that has, as you mentioned, restaurants and some entertainment venues, whether it's for special events, concerts. They have a concert venue there that has a kind of indoor part of it, an indoor-outdoor part of it. So there's a lot of different things that happen there throughout the course of the year. And with it being next door to the hotel that we use for our media headquarters, it creates a unique opportunity for us to do some fun things with that area as well. And frankly, just for our media, just like like the teams, the media that's covering all these rounds of the tournament, they are going from conference championship to a first round game, many of them are traveling to our quarterfinal, to a semifinal after us, to the national championship after us.
Yeah.
And then, oh, by the way, by the time they get that done, many of them then have to quickly turn their focus to this thing called basketball that is happening right now, and within a month, potentially be, back on the road doing a lot of traveling with conference tournaments and then everything that is March Madness. So it's a unique time. Learning this, and I think the unique thing about this is just the second year of this 12-team playoff. This is the first time we've ever been a quarterfinal game, so there's still a lot of learning that we are all doing, and I think this year will help all of us. When I say all of us, the six the six CFP bowls and the national championship with the CFP, to learn how we work our process, because there was a lot of lessons learned last year, and we've been able to put some of those in place, but we're a different event this year because of me in the quarterfinal. So there's new things that we learned. So once we put these 2 years together and can kind of look back at them independently and together, I think there's going to be some good lessons that we're going to be able to make this even better as we go forward, whether we are a quarterfinal or a semifinal.
And just to let people know, the first snowman that I saw last year was actually right outside the media hotel for the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. It was there for just a little while, but it was there because there was some snow in Texas. Hopefully not this time around, but definitely looking forward to it. And like you said, you're on New Year's Eve, so you get to go to the game and then ring in the new year in the DFW area, one of the premier places in this country, and so many people, so many things to do is going to be exciting. So, Scottie, how do you ring in the new year? Last year, we had this thing around your birthday, and now we're having it around New Year's. So I know that every time I ask, I'm like, how are you spending your birthday? Or what are you doing for yourself? You're like, I'll think about that after. So how do you ring in the new year? Are you going to be hanging out with us in media hospitality, or what's the new year look like for Scottie Rodgers?
Well, the new year probably is going to be right where my feet are. Somewhere, I'll be somewhere here in AT&T Stadium, most likely, when the Eastern Time New Year happens at 11 Central, and when the Central Time New Year's happen at midnight, I'll be here. Yeah, our last game earlier this year was on my birthday, which was interesting. And you just learned that when you work in sports, and then we've talked about this before, sports is a lovely business, and it's been very, very good to me. But the one thing that you have to realize is that holidays and birthdays unfortunately get celebrated at different times and not the days that they are. And then you learn that it is about the day, but it's also about making sure that you have that celebration at the appropriate time. Sometimes Christmas happens in January or November. And sometimes, birthdays happen weeks after the actual day. And that's okay because, sports, as we've seen it grow, the holiday, whether especially if you're talking about Thanksgiving, if you're talking about Christmas, if you're talking about New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, those are key days in the sporting calendar, whether it's at the college level or the professional level. So you just learn to work around it, and I'll ring in the new year. We'll have some fun. There'll be a smile on my face when the clock strikes 12 here. In DFW, if I'm right here inside of AT&T Stadium, and then hopefully I'll be able at some point shortly thereafter be able to get over to the hospitality room and spend a little time with you and all the great media folks there, and be able to say some goodbyes before everybody get out later that day and head back to their respective homes.
Yeah, I mean, and you described it perfectly, right? Going from the regular season in football to going into these conference champions. I know this all, I'm sitting here nodding while you're saying it all, because it's the first round into the quarterfinal and how you're traveling to cover multiple ones potentially of that, then to the semifinal, then to the national championship. And it's such a great ride. And then I'm doing basketball in the midst of all of this, which is weird to me. I feel like basketball should wait. I feel like football should finish and then basketball go. But, obviously when they cross each other, there's a lot of craziness that goes on. Scottie, before I let you go, you're a fan first, and so am I, or else we wouldn't be doing this thing. So, what are your thoughts on the college football playoff field when they let it out? Notre Dame doesn't get in, Texas doesn't get in, Vanderbilt doesn't get in. Three teams that people are thinking about, maybe a BYU as well. When you see this field, how do you view this field? And as a fan side of things, what are you excited about beyond the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic when you look at how this bracket has been put together and making history that the Sun Belt and the American are both represented in the same year?
It's a definitely unique bracket. I don't think anybody wants to hear my opinions on the bracket, but so I'll keep those to myself. But look, you just brought up one of the greatest points in this year's bracket when you talk about James Madison and Tulane being in the championship, and those teams earning their way in through a tough process that doesn't necessarily give them all the credence. And you talk about teams that were left out and teams that are in. I think what I saw this year is that your complete resume is something that is going to continue to be at the core of what decides whether a team is going to be in the playoff or out of the playoff. You can't look at one game. You can't look at two games. You can't look at late season games versus early season games. You got to look at the totality of the resume,
Yeah.
with all the measurables that they have, and do the comparisons. And then those that rise, that have the separators, those are the ones that's going to be in. And those that maybe is not as much, those are the ones that are going to be out. And I think that's really, but that's been fundamental to everything in college sports. I've been fortunate enough being in college sports for a really long time. And I've been around a lot of different sports. And I really do think it doesn't matter if it's football, if it's basketball, if it's soccer, if it's volleyball, if it's baseball, softball, you name it. Your total resume of a season should be your measuring point, whether you get in the postseason of a championship, of a national championship that has a bracket. That's to me, that's a fundamental baseline thing. And there's different ways that is determined when it comes to the different what football uses versus basketball and the other sports. But I do think that has to be the thing, because that should rule the day, because your entire body of work is what makes you the team that you are for that season. Doesn't matter the name, doesn't matter what you did the previous season, doesn't matter what you're going to do the next season. You have to be judged on that particular season and your resume for that season. And I think the more it stays that way, the more it's going to be better for everybody. The way we're talking about the college football playoff or any NCAA or national championship.
Yeah, those two teams that beat that other team early on, they're both in, and they're playing for the right to get in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. Scottie, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this to you. A couple things. As a native of Atmore, Alabama, and coming from Alabama with a Bachelor of Arts in Communication in 1995, I know that you roll Tide when you're in the comfort of your own home. They did not keep them out this time. They had 3 losses last year, not as many great wins. This year they had more, but they did not keep out 3-loss Alabama. I know that they're not coming through your avenue of the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic, but your thoughts on seeing your alma mater, which I think is fair to ask you about because it is your alma mater, your thoughts about seeing Alabama have a rematch with Oklahoma and the fact that they are, for the first time ever, in the 12-team playoff.
Look, everybody supports the alma mater. I'm no shyness about being a proud Alabama graduate and supporting Alabama athletics. I support not only what football does. I got love for all the sports. I worked in the athletic department when I was an undergrad there, and it was those 3 years that really were the foundational pieces of what has allowed me to have the career that I've been able to have. Of course, I want them to have success in this playoff, and would love to be able to see them in Miami when it comes to the national championship. But, year's football team it's got some unique aspects to them, and they got their work cut out for them in Norman, Oklahoma next Friday, or the 19th. Um, in a game that is not going to be easy. Obviously Oklahoma's a team that beat them this year, so they beat them in Tuscaloosa. Now they got to try to beat them in Norman, which is not an easy task. So I do think it's going to be a good football game, and look, I wish them the best, but I I've been able to work the national championship with Alabama in it, and they won. I've been able to work the national championship with Alabama in it, and they lost. And I tried to make sure to work both of those games. Like, the team there is just another team. When you're working a game, and especially in sports, you have to learn. It takes a while to learn. I will say this: you don't walk into this being able to make that separation. Early on in my career, I probably struggled with it. Now I'm to a point where, I quickly realized that you just have to separate when it comes to, you can be happy for them, you can be proud about it, and you can be proud about it at the appropriate time, before the game, after the game, or in the comforts of your own home. But you really have to create that separation. And the folks there, they'll charge you a little bit, but they realize that too, because they know deep down who you're rooting for, and how you feel about the school. So, I don't wish. I wish. First of all, we're gonna have some great playoff games. First and foremost, let's be very, very clear. Starting with the first round games on the 19th and 20th, and I just look forward to great games, and I know we're gonna have a great matchup, whether it's gonna be with Miami or with Texas A&M, with Ohio State, and then we'll see what happens from there, because it's going to be unique to be able to have our game and then be able to, quote unquote, sit back and watch our champion, try to go win a national championship. So we'll be rooting on our champion, when after that, and hopefully they'll do like Ohio State did last year, when they won our game and then went on to win the national championship.
Yeah, well, the road to the national champion, having that opportunity to have it come through the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. Scottie, there's something that was said in the Deadpool and Wolverine movie where Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool, looks at Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and he says, "You're going to do this until you're 90." Well, guess what? The Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic has been doing it until it's 90. The 90th Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic is this quarterfinal this year in the college football playoff, doing it till you're 90, and hopefully this is the first 90 and we got the next 90 coming up here. What does it mean to you to have such a monumental moment of 9 decades coming to its place here in the spotlight in the college football playoff at the end of this year?
One of the numbers that not to make it about me, but this is my 27th of those 90 to work. So when you start thinking about being around for almost a third of the games,
Yeah.
Whether it's for my volunteer time to now being on staff, it's very unique. The history of our game is so cool. And this year, you'll see some things in our game program, and we'll end up amplifying on our website and digital platforms, talking about the 90, to get to this point as a game that started all the way back with the 1936 season and January 1st of 1937, and all the evolutions that have happened with the game, from sponsors to the change of venue from Cotton Bowl Stadium in Fair Park up to now AT&T Stadium in Arlington. The legends, the personalities, whether they played or coached, or whether they were a part of our leadership in some form or fashion, or affected the game in some way. It's such a neat event, and it's nice. We're doing some things and to celebrate the 90th as a part, and you'll see it. You've seen it probably a little bit in some of the graphics and some of the things you'll see when you come to town. It's just such a neat history, and being able to go back and remember some of those names, and names that people know, and names that people don't know. When you start throwing out names like Joe Montana and Jim Brown, just to name a couple, But then you start throwing out names, like Dat Wynn, who played at Texas A&M, or that great Miami teams of the '90s that came here and played and had a dominant performance in our game. And Ohio State has been in our game now multiple times, and coming back for a third year in a row. And what happened last year with Jack Sawyer, and the play that the sack, scoop, and score. Which was probably the latest edition of the plays and moments that people will talk about forever.
Yep.
It's really, really fun to be able to celebrate that. It's always fun to go back and find those nuggets and those little things that a lot of people don't know, and share a little history about our game, in addition to celebrating the current year's matchup and the fact that a team in our game is playing for a national championship, or the teams in our game are playing for a national championship, and the team that wins will go on to potentially play for the national championship.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, almost a third of those 90 years we've had Scottie Rodgers here, which is a feat that not many get to talk about accomplishing. So, Scottie, as always, I appreciate everything you do with the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic, everything around it, and your work in general, because you and I have crossed paths in so many different places because you're always willing to lend a hand. And I think that says more about you than anything in helping the community and just being there for other people and giving people an opportunity, myself included. So I look forward to seeing you in the not too distant future. I am definitely going to take advantage of Irving, Texas when I'm down there. The Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic, VP of Communications inside the College Football Playoff. Scottie, I appreciate you. I send you and your family my love and my support, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thanks, Dan. See you soon.
Take care.